Hello, and welcome to Stories from India, a podcast where we talk about myths, legends, and folk tales from India. I am your host, Narad Muni, and I'm a mythological character myself. I have the gift of eternal life and knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. By profession, I'm a traveling musician and a storyteller. So, the way I'm doing my job is by podcast. In this episode, we are doing a folk tale from Karnataka. We have done a couple of tales from Karnataka before, but this one is rather different. This was requested by one of my long-time listeners. It's a story of an Adams family version of a village and what happens to an outsider who tries to live there. So let's dive right in. Our curtain rises on two people walking across the country. There was the master, let's call him Guru, and his apprentice, Chela. Guru and Chela were walking across the country. Not because they loved it, it was just part of their profession. They would walk from one village to another, spreading their knowledge in exchange for food and shelter. It was not a particularly lucrative profession, as you might imagine, but I'm sure they got better tax breaks than most everyone else. And by that, I meant they paid no taxes. And the job description included lots of travel, so they didn't have much to complain about. So, anyway, they had been walking for a couple of days when they happened on a village. Even though it was odd that the village was not on their map, this was actually pretty great because it was evening now and soon it would be dark. The village had a welcome signpost. At least, it should have been a welcome signpost, except it just looked blank. As they entered the village, they noticed another astonishing fact. They didn't see a single person. All the stores were shuttered. None of the houses they saw had any open windows or doors. Even the animals they saw, cows, sheep, goats, were sleeping. Guru didn't want to hang around in this ghost town. But I'm hungry and tired, complained Chela. And how exactly will you be solving either of those by staying here? Asked Guru. Chela would have given in and agreed to move on. But at this point, a rooster crowed. That seemed to spark some activity. The sun had set. But only now doors and windows began opening, and people started to emerge from their homes. See, I told you, said Chela. He started walking towards a cafe, which was now opening its doors. The waitress gave them a weird look when Chela and Guru ordered an elaborate dinner with rotis, several sabjis, and biryani. Are you sure you don't want an omelette instead? Maybe boiled eggs and toast? She asked. But Chela was firm. He was hungry. But he was also not so hungry as to forget common sense. How much will it cost? He asked. You haven't printed any prices on the menu. 1 copper coin, replied the waitress. That shocked Guru and Chela. A meal like that would have cost at least a silver coin, maybe even gold, in practically every other place they had been in. Chela decided to test the waters more. What about a pinch of salt to go with the food? That's one copper coin too, replied the waitress. Listen, Mac, everything on the menu is priced the same. One copper coin. Why is that? Asked Guru, speaking for the first time. It's a clever tactic from our king. He decided it's easiest for everyone if everything costs the same. Didn't you read our welcome signpost when you entered town? We tried, replied Chela, but it was all blank. Oh, that's another decision by our king, replied the waitress. We had both the background and the lettering on the signposts in white. That way, we didn't have to buy two different colors of paint. At that moment, their dinner/breakfast arrived, and Guru and Chela forgot all about these odd decisions by the king. They did check into a hotel. Again, for one copper coin, they got the presidential suite. The hotel manager did think it was odd how they were checking in just when the night was getting started. The next morning, Guru and Chela had a chat. Guru insisted it was in their best interest to move on. And give up this paradise? Asked Chela. No way. I have paid a copper coin already, and that lets me stay in this presidential suite for as long as I want. What I earned in my last village alone is enough to cover my food and living expenses for a whole year. Why should I walk across the country anymore? Suit yourself, replied Guru. But consider yourself warned. In the country of the foolish, no one wins. Whatever, said Chela, not really caring. He had his mind on his next meal. He decided he would order a bucket load of Srikhand today. It would still cost one copper coin. This was perfect, he told himself. A few months passed after that. Chela had put on a lot of weight. Not surprising, considering the amount he ate and the total lack of exercise. One day, as it so happened, a burglar decided to break in and steal from a rich merchant in the village. It's a bit beyond me how someone could get rich by buying and selling everything for the uniform price of one copper coin. But let's just gloss over this, quite as the original folktale does. So anyway, the burglar picked the quietest part of the day, which was around noon, when everyone was fast asleep. He used special burglar tools. And yes, he purchased them for a copper coin as well. Approaching the merchant's home, he made a hole in its wall. As he was crawling through, unfortunately for him, a section of the wall collapsed on him, badly hurting him. He viewed this as a miscarriage of justice and decided to seek a correction of the situation from the king himself. He appeared the next night in the king's court and explained, Your Majesty, I was performing my family's traditional profession when I was badly injured on the job. I want to see some punishment. How did you get hurt? Asked the king. It's the wall of the merchant's home. It collapsed on me, replied the burglar. The king's command was not to put the burglar in jail. Instead, he ordered the merchant to be brought to court. When that was done, the king announced that the merchant was going to have to pay a big price for allowing his wall to collapse on this poor guy. When you say a big price, do you mean a copper coin, Your Majesty? Asked the merchant, hopefully. Silence, roared the king. You will be punished in the most severe way possible. You shall be put to death. The merchant was shocked by this. He needed to get out of this situation somehow. But, Your Majesty, it's not my fault. Then whose fault is it? Asked the king. The bricklayer who constructed my home. Surely he could have done a better job. That means he is responsible. That logic worked with the king. The bricklayer was arrested and brought before the king. The king sentenced him to death, at which point the bricklayer explained how it was not his fault. I clearly remember working on this merchant's house. My work may not have been perfect, but that was because I was distracted. The dancer who lives next door to the merchant, she was walking up and down all night as I was working. The noise from her anklet as she walked was bothering me. Again, this game of pass the parcel was working with the king. The dancer was arrested, but she had an excuse too. She was impatiently waiting for the jeweler to finish making her new bangles. But the jeweler had an explanation as well when he was summoned. He would certainly have delivered the dancer's order on time, except he had a competing higher priority order that he had to work on first. The stricter deadline and higher priority on the other order were because the merchant was about to have a wedding in his house. Now, if you're having a wedding in your house, it seems unlikely that you'd also be constructing parts of the house at the same time. It's just that the scaffolding and construction equipment may interfere with the wedding festivities. The king smiled impishly and said, And we come back full circle. So it's the merchant who is responsible for hurting this poor thief. No, Your Majesty, said the merchant. That was my dad. You can't punish him. He's no more. Then I will punish you, he told the merchant. The crimes of a parent must be visited on their children if necessary. No amount of protest from the merchant made any difference. He was going to be executed. However, luckily for him, the sentence could not be carried out. The executioner complained that the merchant could not be executed because he didn't have the proper jail clothes in the merchant's size. He only had extra large and extra large prisoner clothes. The merchant clearly needed small. The king solved that problem as well. He asked his soldiers to fetch someone extra large or extra large because, to him, that totally made sense. Now, when the soldiers immediately grabbed the king, who happened to be extra large, the king quickly amended his orders. Fetch someone extra, extra large. And guess who the soldiers brought? Chela, of course. It was a weird trial where the only question Chela was asked was what size clothes he wore. And as soon as he said extra, extra large, the king pronounced him guilty. Chela protested his innocence, but the king was satisfied with his verdict. The chain of reasoning was absolutely clear to the king, and that's all that mattered. In jail and awaiting execution, Chela recalled Guru's warning about staying in a place like this. He prayed for his master to know what was happening and to come to his rescue. And something like this should have really been mentioned earlier, but it turns out that Guru was telepathic. And luckily, he was in a neighboring village. As Chela prayed for intervention, Guru was sleeping like ordinary humans do in the night time. He awoke with a start. Without wasting any time, he rushed straight for the neighboring village and the king's court. It was still in the middle of the night, and that was a good thing. The court was in full session. Perfect. Guru walked in and introduced himself. Welcome to this great kingdom, Guru. How may we help you? Asked the king. Do you know that guy you have lined up for execution, Chela? Asked Guru. Indeed. Do you know him? Asked the king. Yes, I do. He's my apprentice, replied the Guru. I am not going to let him go, said the king, preemptively. We already put him in death row clothes and set the stage for his execution. I can't find someone else. And I'm not asking you to, said the Guru. All I want is a few minutes to chat with him. I suppose that is a reasonable request, said the king, who was normally very unreasonable. So Guru and Chela met in Chela's prison cell. There, said Guru, as Chela wept on his shoulders. I have a cunning plan. Quickly, he whispered something to Chela so the guards outside the prison cell could not hear. The next night, when the execution was about to begin, the stage was set. The king was ready, with popcorn. Chela was brought forward. The charges were read. Just then, Guru stepped out of the crowd. He addressed the king and began, Your Majesty, Not now, Guru. Remember what I told you yesterday? You can't stop me executing your apprentice. The wheels are already in motion. Your man is guilty. I am not suggesting that at all, Your Majesty, replied Guru. I have a request. What is it? Asked the king. I should like to be put to death before Chela, said Guru. What? Are you volunteering? Asked the king. No one has done that before. Undoubtedly, said Guru. They were not as wise as I am. At this point, Chela piped in. Your Majesty, don't listen to him. I would like to be put to death first. You can have him killed too. I have no objections to that. But I must go first. This transformation in a single day from someone desperately trying to avoid execution to someone embracing it was stunning, to say the least. Chela was actually enthusiastic now. He tugged at his chains. Come on, let's get this show on the road, he said, with a bright, enthusiastic smile. I haven't got all night. No, Your Majesty, I must be executed first, spoke up Guru. Stop, said the king. I will decide who goes first. But first, Guru, help me understand what is happening here. Guru appeared reluctant and did not say anything. Neither did Chela when he was asked. Finally, Guru bowed under pressure when the king threatened to have Chela executed first. That is to say, apparently bowed under pressure. This was all just part of Guru's plan. As if reluctantly, Guru finally told the king that with his divine gifted vision, he had perceived a secret. Whoever was executed next in this kingdom would become the next king. And not just once, but in their next 7 lives. This was easy to believe. The afterlife was a core part of the beliefs and values of most citizens in medieval India. The king thought about this and came to the conclusion that Guru and Chela were hoping for. The king decided that what Guru said must be real. For scholars like Guru and Chela to agree must mean that they had each independently come to the same conclusion. Even if they hadn't, it was okay. They both believed it, so it must be true. He faced them and said, Gentlemen, I'm afraid I cannot grant your wish. I wish to secure my own future. I shall be executed next. He stepped down from the throne and headed for the stage, to loud cheers from the crowd. Guru and Chela looked resigned to their fate. The king, smiling from ear to ear, stepped up and was promptly executed. The Guru prepared to launch into an explanation for why no more executions were necessary. But that was no longer required. As if a spell was broken, the executioner himself and all of the villagers present snapped out of it. They didn't want to execute Guru and Chela, who had rid them of their evil, unreasonable king. They wanted guidance on becoming normal again. They asked for Guru and Chela to become their next king and minister. But the scholars had a much better idea. They chaired various committees to bring the village to normalcy, including free market economics, sleeping at night like the rest of the world, and signposts that actually told visitors useful information. That's all for now. A couple of notes on the show. I've made a few minor modifications from the original. A minister advised the king, but there was no reason for him to be a separate character other than to offer Chela the newly vacated post at the end of the story. In the original story, Guru and Chela do actually become king and minister, but that ending was probably tailored to the monarchy of the time. The word guru and chela are Hindi words for master and disciple. That's all we have time for this week. In the next episode, we are back in the world of the Mahabharata. We'll see the Hastinapur dynasty in trouble. Again. If you have comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories you would like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or tweet at sfipodcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. Thanks to all of you listeners for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. I'll see you next week.